evening.
Good evening. This is Doug Wilkerson with Saturday Night Live Life Recovery. And I want to welcome again. I think I've welcomed everybody here in person, but for you out there in the internet land, I want to say welcome. Glad you're with us tonight. We're going to be covering again step 8. That may seem like overkill, but it's our process. We take a step a month and we work through it with different topics out of the Life Recovery workbook and Bible. And this is the workbook. It's called the Life Recovery Workbook and Life Recovery Bible. And we cover the steps. And tonight's topic will be Forgiven to Forgive, and this is taken out of Matthew 18:23 through 35. Plus, I am hoping that I will be able to get to the 10 steps for forgiveness, the 10-step forgiveness protocol, which is something I was going to do last week, but we weren't able to get to it, and I probably won't get it all done. It'd probably be a two-week deal, but I think it'll be good. It was actually in the Psychology Today, and it was written by Judith Eve Lipton, MD, and she's a psychologist. She says that she suggests this protocol to her patients, those that have issues dealing with problems with parenting, with where maybe they've harmed children, or even couples that have been wounded by adultery. And so, anyway, it's I think it's good. It's how to make a complete, complex, and healing apology that addresses the injured party's pain and possibly the need for retaliation. So sometimes when people get upset, they feel like they got to retaliate, but none of you probably know anything about that, right?
Don't get mad at you.
Yeah, don't get mad, get even. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, we'll be talking about that later on. I want to read a couple of thoughts. We started a little late because we were talking about our up and coming move. We're going to be moving our location from here in the fellowship hall basement over to the former teen center, which is over on the parking lot at 5th and Virginia. And so we'll be doing that what was that date? We'll be moved over there on September the 9th. Yes. I remember we were going to be off on the 2nd. So, but anyway, I want to read a couple of quotes here. Physicist John Wheeler said this. He says, "We live," and I really like this. I heard this week. It says, "We live on an island surrounded by the sea of ignorance. As our island," listen to this, as our island of knowledge grows, so does our shoreline of ignorance." I liked it. Einstein said this. In fact, I have this on my desk in my office. It says, "In the middle of difficulties lie opportunity." I think it's very important. Aristotle, this is the last one I want to read, but Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, said this. Says, "Virtue is a habit." Think about it. We're not done there. Virtue is a habit. You cannot expect to do the big things right in life if you haven't practiced doing the little things. It's the little stuff, right? If we don't take care of the little stuff, those micro decisions, those micro choices, if we don't make those healthy decisions in that area, if you're not careful, you make, because those decisions actually put you in a position to pretty much even make the big decisions for you. Or at least you've gotten in such a habit that you fall into it. Little foxes spoil the vine, that's right. What'd you say, John?
Pretty much in superposition.
Super. Yeah, a little quantum physics there. So anyway, welcome, and we are going to kick it in high gear here. We're going to have some good music, praise and worship. So come on down, guys, and we are going to get started. First gear is all right. First gear is all right.
It won't get you very far though.
Yeah. Well, first gear, some of these boys, you kind of remind me of that one Brian, that one Beach Boy, Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson, that's it.
He's saying you belong on a beach.
No, Maestro. You said it's Maestro, that's kind of.
Yes, he is Maestro.
I lived on the beach for a couple of years down in Florida. It was wonderful. Our apartment was about 3 blocks off the beach. I liked it.
So you are a Beach Boy.
Yes, I am.
Jimmy, ready?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Road I'm on leads to nowhere. I've got to find my way. Find my way. Where I go now isn't clear. I guess I'll find my way. I'll find my way. Someday, push high, find my way, find my way. If I press on, find my way, find my way. Someday. And I'll find my way. Someday. I love that song. Stay near You were my tender and dry. Everything I Love is darkness, tremble at what they Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Bobby.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, Bobby. That's maestro to you. Maestro, yes. Maestro.
The Beach Boy.
That's right.
And he does get around. Step one, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step two, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step three, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Step four, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step five, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step six, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. All of that might hurt. We humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, where we are right now this month, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
That's good, John. And it's Tommy. Come on down, Tommy. Big Tom.
Hello, everybody.
Look more up to you. Thank you.
How you guys doing tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Step 8,
Step 8.
forgiven to forgive. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Listing all the people we have harmed will probably trigger a natural defensive. With each name we write down, another mental list may begin to form. A list of the wrongs that have been done to us. How can we deal with the resentment we hold towards others so we can move towards making amends?
Stop. Don't we want to talk about that?
How can we move forward?
Yeah, how can we deal with the resentment?
Stop doing the same thing to others? Maybe
What was that?
stop doing the same thing you're,
How can we deal with our resentment? Let's just,
okay, how can we deal with our resentment? Well, we have to recognize it.
that's good.
Anybody? How do we deal with our resentment?
I think Matthew has a statement there.
That's good to help us.
Yes?
Yeah, good.
When I did mine, I didn't come up with a lot, so I didn't, I had some resentments against myself, so.
Good. So how did you deal with that? If you want to share.
Well, I quit a lot of the behaviors, and addictions, and then, had to, kind of forgive myself and, just change so I can be happier with myself. So more or less repentance and change.
Good. So would it be all right if I ask you to say that again in a
Sentence.
yeah, in a kind of a direct way? Let me ask the question so we kind of get it focused. So, Tommy, do you want to ask the question?
No way.
Okay. And how can we deal with the resentment that we're holding on to?
Can you reword that?
How have you dealt with resentment? You just get me back, right?
No, I just, at about step 4, I kind of knew God was there, so I kind of trusted him through the process.
Yeah.
At step 4, I had to kind of go through some things, with my sponsor. So I prayed about him, I prayed about something. He came through, so I kept leaning on him harder and harder.
Now, we talking about your sponsor or God?
God.
Okay, I just want to be.
Well, I had to go over some things with my sponsor, but I talked to God about it first.
Okay.
And I was like, if you can kind of get me through this, where it's not too bad, I know that I can lean on you.
Good.
Well, it went good, so I kept pushing it further and further and further.
Good.
And, that's,
And so that helped you to deal with your resentment?
yeah, and, I'm sure I'll identify some more, but, I think this year, my brain's trying to heal up.
Yes.
So it's kind of hit and miss, I'll do some bookwork and it's kind of hit and miss. But I've been trying my hardest, but the only resentments I come up with myself, a lot of self-sabotage.
Yes.
And then I started, I made some financial mistakes. And, then on the street, so I'd be like really angry at myself for things like that. And,
Yes.
Anger.
Yes.
yeah, and then there was like some shame and guilt.
Yes.
And, I just had to kind of quit getting mad at myself and forgive myself, and
Good.
then realize that Jesus wasn't mad at me.
Good.
I'm sure that, he would show me right now.
Yeah.
And, just, going with it from there and then forgive myself and keep pushing forward and keep trying.
Good. Good. The biggest enemy is in me. Enemy and in me. Right?
That's a good one.
Did you realize that Babe Ruth had the most strikeouts of anybody? A righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. If Babe Ruth couldn't deal with the guilt of striking out so much, he would have never made so many home runs.
That's correct.
You gotta try and practice. And that's why there's therefore now no condemnation of those that are in Christ Jesus,
Yes.
because the anointing leads and guides you into all
Yes.
truth.
Yes.
So you've got to be able to forgive yourself, and in that realize that God loves you as dear children, and forgive them, for they know not what they do. If we knew better, we'd do better.
you know, that statement, I've used that statement. If we knew better, we'd do better. But I think we always knew better. But we, and we want to do better. But just like Matthew was saying, in so many words, we have a tendency to punish or sabotage or beat upon ourselves or reject ourselves or say that God rejects us, and that's us doing it and doing it in the authority of God or Jesus. And so, and that's why the grace, God's grace, and you know, we talked about mercy here a few weeks ago. We need His mercy because His grace is there. His grace reaches out to us when we're guilty and we're in the problems. He doesn't stand back. He comes to us, and that grace I'm talking about is there to come and infuse us with His power to enable us. I'm going to be talking about this Sunday night, but so maybe it's just on my mind right now. But you know, that's some of what you were experiencing was not only His mercy, but then also His grace, and you were experiencing that His presence, His visitation, which empowered you to be able to stand and trust. At least that's what I'm thinking. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. All right, go ahead and finish the rest of that sentence. Or start all over, I don't care.
Okay. Listing all the people we have harmed will probably trigger a natural defensiveness. With each name we write down, another mental list may begin to form. A list of the wrongs that have been done to us. How can we deal with the resentment we hold towards others so we can move towards making amends?
So the rest of that statement was, how do we deal with the resentments we hold towards others? And we could say, and towards ourselves,
Yeah, that's what
Right.
it says, yes.
so that we can move towards making amends. Because it's hard to make a real amends, a heartfelt amends, until you deal with that resentment. Anybody have a definition for resentment?
Holding yourself hostage while expecting them to be hurt.
That's a good one. I like that. That's good. And
That's a good one.
I wrote one statement here by this sentence. And anyway, I'm going to try it out on you, see what you think. And this is about how to deal with our resentment towards ourselves and others to help us to move towards making amends. And I wrote down here, by sneaking up on it. What do you think about that?
Not giving yourself time to overthink it.
But by going ahead and just sneaking up on it and getting closer, piece at a time, you know, here a little, there a little, go ahead and doing what you would like to do. I don't know, that was a thought that I came up with by sneaking up on it. But, you know, sometimes we just can't go from 0 to 100 all at once. We just kind of have to we have to chunk it, so to speak.
Take our time.
Okay,
Well, the Webster Dictionary says a feeling of indignation is displeasure or persistent ill will is something regarded as wrong, insult, or
would you read that again, but a little louder, please?
It is, says a feeling of indignation, displeasure, or persistent ill will as something regarded as wrong, insult, or injury.
Yeah, and basically what that's saying is we feel that someone has done something wrong to us, so then we see it as a debt, whether it's physical or emotional, psychological debt, and we're going to hold on to that debt until it's paid. Right?
Yeah.
And thank you for that, Brandon. And so, and in fact, we're gonna hear what Jesus had to say
Yeah,
about
here's a
that
good
right
story.
now, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Go ahead.
In Matthew 18, verses 23 and 24, Jesus told this story. A king decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. And then in verses 18, 27, 28, it says, the man begged for forgiveness because he couldn't pay the king. The king was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave him his debt. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. Chapter 18, verse 32 to 35, it says, this was reported to the king. Then the king called in the man he had forgave and says, you evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant? The angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters.
Good. Did you have any thoughts on that?
That's that last part. If we don't forgive other people, bad things can come on us. I thought that's.
Well, I think that's a double, there's a duality here. For example, when the disciples will go into a city, if a city receive you not, cast off the dust to your feet, cast not your pearls before swine. So I think it goes back to what you said, if they knew better, they do better. Well, some of them knew exactly what they were doing. Like the Pharisees or whatever, they were blind to what they were doing perhaps. And when somebody wants forgiveness, it's good for you if you forgive them whether they ask or not. But some things are just plain wrong and need to be stood up against, like cast not your pearls before swine or whatever. Like North Korea, for example, or other places are letting somebody die at Ewart Park for heat stroke, stuff like that, just plain wrong. So I have a hard problem with not so much how I've personally been wronged, but wrongs like Russia versus Ukraine, for example, stuff like that.
I don't know how to really respond to that other than the only way that we can really affect the world is to affect that world that's closest to us and dealing with us. And when we change, that affects things around us.
Yes.
And oftentimes we want to try to deal with stuff that's way out of our control or in places we can't, and we don't have access or power to really do that, and let go the important or close things to us that we need to deal with. And forgiveness is one of those things. And the reason why is because it will affect us if we don't. And this story is telling us that this man was millions of dollars in debt, and the king had pity on him and forgave him. Now, the trouble is, he was just like most of us, this servant of the king. He was used to operating in a system of, let's use the term maybe dog eat dog type of thing, all right? But he asked for forgiveness, whether he thought he'd get it or not, he asked for it. He took the chance. But see, he wasn't transformed by forgiveness. He didn't understand forgiveness. So I'm let off the hook, but I keep everybody else on the hook. Because that's the way I see the world. And so the king, the story here is representing that the king didn't like what he did. And just like if we've accepted Christ as our Savior and we've been forgiven trillions and trillions and trillions of debt, figuratively speaking, and we carry around resentment or bitterness for little specks in other people's eyes. Taking a verse out of John, which I may read later. And and if we can deal with some of these little things like this, if we can learn to let these things go and forgive them and cancel those emotional debts. Yeah, you did me wrong, but I'm going to let it go because I am not going to suffer with that anymore. I've done that multiple times, right? Okay, and the thing of it is because you're going to suffer. Now, the rest of this story here is this guy did suffer, right? And it's to illustrate there was a lot of suffering. Now, I don't know, but I always used to read this story that this guy had to pay all that he owed. And you think, well, how's he going to come up with millions and millions of dollars? Well, he probably has stuff out there, okay, because he's involved in business. And maybe not. But maybe what he owed more than anything else was turning his heart towards forgiveness and letting things go. Maybe that's the real point of the story here. Yeah. Well, how would the king know? Well, when we line up with God, as somebody was talking about earlier, Matthew, when we line up a little bit with him, he moves in that behalf, and things start happening. And we have an illustration with Joseph, where he was the lowest in the lowest, and in the prison, and eventually because of his personal integrity, he ran the prison, and then he ran the country. Now, is that going to happen to everybody? I don't know, but the principle is true, okay? And so all we have to do is give it a chance, right? Give it a chance and see what will happen. And what do you know? It happens. Go ahead.
When we look at all that God has forgiven us, it makes sense to choose to forgive others. This also frees us from the torture of festering resentment. We can't change what others have done to us, but we can write off their debts and become willing to make amends.
Yeah. I had a guy that owed me $10,000, and every time he saw me, I told him, I said, hey, I've let that go. Because I wasn't gonna, he had a heart attack and situations and kids and all kinds of stuff, and I decided, not that I didn't need the money, because I borrowed the money to loan it to him, okay? So I had to pay it back. And, but I decided I wasn't going to be mad about it. I wasn't going to let that eat me up. But every time he saw me, it bothered him. And I told him, hey, I let it go. I'm expecting God to get it back to me. He always said, well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I think he meant it. But he was way more bothered about it than I was. Oh, and I know your next question is, well, did he ever make good on his promises? No. So,
You don't
And
sound like you have a bunch of resentments.
do I?
You don't sound like you have a bunch of resentments.
I don't. I thought he was a friend.
Yeah.
You know, the friendship suffered after that because of his dynamics.
Yeah.
And he was a preacher. He was a minister. He was a friend. You know, so. But the rest of the story, maybe he would have eventually, but you know, he died early. So you know, I'm not happy about that for him, for his family. But
He has to answer for that.
not as far as I'm concerned.
Not for you, not to you, but.
Okay, and so because you know, I let it go.
We are supposed to pay our debts.
We are. I'm not just, but just like
Well,
Jesus said, just like Jesus.
Old Testament's a lot stricter about it.
Oh, like Jesus said, you know, God forgive them. You know, he went on and said, they don't know what they do. I'm not saying that he didn't know what he was doing, but I don't think that was his intention. Never was his intention.
That's the hard part, when you know they know what you did.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that my life is better by letting it go. And he's not the only one that's done that, you know? And, to me, and so I figured out, well, maybe I just need to stop loaning people money.
I think that's one thing that I noticed too, because man, I could hold a grudge. But for a long time, what it took me realizing was that the grudge was really with myself, because I would abandon my values and I would do things that I really didn't want to do. I'd say yes when I really wanted to say no. So I wasn't holding boundaries with myself or with others. And then they'd run all over me, and it was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then I want to hate them for something I already figured they would probably do. So I did it to myself. So holding a resentment against them, you know, I just had to forgive myself and be like, you know, like you said, I'm not going to allow that anymore. And it's learning those boundaries.
Kind of like taking the poison yourself and expecting someone else to die.
Exactly.
That's kind of what Jesus went through. He knew what they were talking against him and this and that. He knew everything.
Right.
And he had a plan though. Pilate was getting ready to let him go, and he had an ultimate plan. But I think in that example, we may find strength in the fact that some people, well, it says, you're gonna be an enemy of the world if you're a follower of Jesus. So you can expect it. The worst thing you do though is poison yourself
Yeah.
with all that feeling.
Yes. Yes.
So do you think it's wrong for a person to take somebody to smoke them for?
No. I don't. You know, it has, in my opinion, it has more to do with the motive. And if you're angry, you know, I've seen some people be really angry in situations. But you know what? I found out that if your heart is in a good place, if even in that situation, they already know. You know, they already know. They know. 99.9% of the time, they know. Anything else, Tommy?
No, I was gonna pass it off.
All right, come on down to Willie.
Can I tell you about my situation?
No, not right now.
Not this situation. God told me not to take this person to court.
Wait a minute, I said no.
Good evening. Forgive and to forgive.
Speak up a little bit.
I don't want to.
I didn't hear what you said.
Forgive and to forgive, and I don't want to.
Oh,
Yeah. You know, I'm glad I'm doing reflection on this one, because this is one that I have struggled with quite a lot here. Not so much today as I have throughout the past. So, and I really dealt with really had a hard time with some of these, but we're better. My question one, are there people on my list that I have had trouble forgiving for their part in our relationship? Yes. There's one in particular that, you know, this person really got to me. And I have forgiven him. And I just don't talk to him anymore. I don't want to have nothing to do with him now. Because it's the only way I can deal with myself through it. And going into question two, what keeps me from letting others off the hook? Fear, resentment, caretaking. You know, as long as I don't forgive them, that's just going to keep the anger in me. And what keeps me from letting others off the hook?
Does anybody know what that means, off the hook? Others off the hook?
Like you're playing tag and you got to the place where no one can tag you. You're off the hook, you know. I don't know what I thought. I don't know why they even thought.
I'm reaching, but I can't grab
When
it.
you're like off the hook, like, that becomes my way.
well, like if there's a hook in a fish's mouth,
Yeah,
it's causing them pain. And as long as they're on the hook, they're being tortured, and that's what you want whenever you're resenting them. You want them tortured the way that you feel tortured. But if you let them off the hook, then their suffering goes away. But you might still be stuck on the hook because you really didn't want to let them off that hook. You wanted them to be down there in the pit, wallowing in the mud with you, or trying to pass it on.
Because if I pass my pain to them, then they'll suffer with me,
Mhm.
right? Now, if I let them off the hook, I may suffer along. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I choose to suffer, that is.
Right.
or you can just let it go.
Or you can just let it go.
We're talking about letting them off the hook, not letting yourself off the hook.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, no, we're talking about letting. I said off the hook. What does that mean? Maybe we need to let ourselves off the hook, right, Matthew?
Mhm.
Yeah. Two, and if we don't let ourselves off the hook, then that means we have chosen to suffer.
Yeah.
And of course, we talked about Spinoza's quote on, emotion which is suffering ceases to be suffering as soon as we get a clear and precise picture of it. And that's what we're talking about today, getting a clear and precise picture of what's going on. Instead of getting swept up in emotional suffering or torture or resentment. So.
I think people put people on the wrong hooks, like it comes down to understanding, like you might resent somebody until you find out their situation and go, oh, wow, that explains it.
Absolutely. That happens all the time, And these 10 protocols that I'm going to talk about talks about that very same thing. Anybody else have any comment on letting what keeps me from letting others off the hook? Is it fear? Is it resentment? Is it caretaking?
All three.
Could be misunderstanding. A lot of people hold resentments that, they're the ones that their fault, like jails, institutions, people are using, they'll hold, a lot of resentments towards people, you know, when it was their own fault, so maybe not looking at the truth.
Absolutely. We like to build fantasies and create imaginations and alternate realities, you know, so. Well, we're down to question number 3. Are you ready for that?
Yeah. What blocks me from forgiving others for the wrongs done to me? What blocks me from forgiving others for the wrongs done to me? The fact that if I forgive them, then they would do it again. And I don't want them to do it again, so if I don't forgive them, then I still know that it's there, and I don't let my guard down to where they can do it to me again. That would be the way to think of it. That's not the right way. I've learned since then.
How's that worked out for you?
That way it didn't.
Yeah.
A lot of jail time.
A lot of resentment, emotional pain, suffering,
You know,
self-torture.
you know?
I'm gonna poison my soul because of something that somebody else did to me.
Right. And just to
With
find
the
out-
reasoning, according to what you said, with the reasoning that, that way if I inflict myself with pain, that way I won't let them do it again.
Right.
Okay? I wonder if there's a healthier way through that minefield.
Yes,
Oh, okay,
there is.
go ahead.
Fear of what others would think of me, right? You know, back in that state of mind, I really didn't care what people thought because, you know, I'll tell you what I thought and I'd walk on. But that's the life I lived in. The fear of letting others see me hurt. You know, feelings never occurred to me. I never cared back then.
Well, this thing here is fear of other people seeing you hurt, which is another pride issue.
Right.
You know, I gotta be tough, I gotta be macho, I gotta be mean, I gotta be hard, I gotta be ruthless, I gotta be scary,
I lived it.
I gotta be armored up. How'd that work out for us? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, fear of conflict.
Protecting others' feelings.
Protecting others' feelings to avoid conflict. Now again, like I said, now, let's go to today on this one. I will think before I act, because I do feel that I need to think of other people first, and then think of a logical way out of it. That's the way I think now. I'm trying to. Sometimes I get bound up and spiral down and catch myself just before I get a little further down than I want to go. That's all I got.
Thank you, Willie. Any other comments from anyone on the material that we've gone over thus far?
I was gonna say, for me, I don't know, it's probably about the 5th or 6th time I got to that question that I realized that I just didn't trust God to do God's job. Because he's like, the wrath is mine, says the Lord, but so is your forgiveness too. And if you forgive them, I don't know if I can forgive you for forgiving them.
Wow.
Like, and it was, that was a rough conversation to have with him, and because that pride, man, choking on that. And that's,
But it was an honest one.
yeah,
And until you become honest with yourself and honest with God, because he can handle it,
mhm.
then we're not really aware, so we're not really able to deal with it. Usually we want to hide from everything, right? Isn't that what addiction's all about? Is an alternate way to deal with our stuff
and hopefully give us that spiritual connection that we feel the emptiness inside. And so, but the trouble is, never hits it, never makes it.
We expect one item and then give it pain.
Yeah, we want to avoid pain, seek pleasure.
Logical sticks out as a word that he used. That would imply a clear understanding of the situation, which I can give you a quick example. Today, I was in the thrift shop and I was examining something really close, and the sales clerk was irritated with me for like looking at it really close. And I was irritated at her for being irritated with me for looking at it really close. And then a friend of mine said, he's got glaucoma. And the clerk switched immediately from being indignant to, oh, you poor dear. And she understood why I was looking at stuff close. So
Awesome illustration. Awesome illustration. Yep, it happens all the time. And being able to gain other people's perspective. But back to your comment a while ago, Vanessa, about being mad at God for forgiving. You know, Jonah had the same deal. And as far as he was concerned, he was right. But you know, hi, Michael. This is Michael, right? All right. Okay, few minutes left. Should I talk about that? Should I talk about,
The 10 things.
we want to go to the 10 things. We'll hit 5 of them in 15 minutes. How about that? Well, you know, judge not, lest you be judged, out of Matthew 7:1-5, and we'll go to the 10 things. How about that? This is the 10 forgiving protocols, and the first one seems simple. But this is what she said, coming from what I don't know if I said this tonight or not, but from her psychology background, also from the 12 steps, AA. She said she pulled some of this information from the Jewish prayer for forgiveness on the High Holy Day, and also the Orthodox Jewish tradition called the bedtime Shema. And so, anyway, I think it's pretty good. And the first one is, say you're sorry. Say you are sorry.
To yourself?
No, to the other person.
Oh,
Oh, I don't think it would be bad to say it to yourself. You know, recognizing that I am sorry. But we're primarily talking about dealing with being hurt by somebody else. What I read earlier is, what do you do if you find out that you have hurt or harmed somebody, and you want to revive the relationship or even improve it? Okay, and then we talked about how to have how to apologize here, a complete, complex, healing apology. So the first step is say you're sorry. Now, that seems pretty light, but it's really important to say you're sorry. Now, it's not just what you say though, but that's the beginning, right? The beginning, saying you're sorry. Number 2 is make an inventory. It's talking about you. Make an inventory of how your behavior might have hurt or harmed someone. Ask the person if that list that you're giving them is complete and correct. Ask the person if this list is complete, and correct your list to reflect the complete account of the cost of your behavior. Okay, so we need to take an inventory. We've talked about, and I think Ms. Sheep may have lifted this from AA and NA and all the other A's, that there's a time we have to take an inventory. We have to look at things, both the liabilities and the assets. We need to figure out where we're at. Instead of denying or avoiding, or numbing out or running from, hiding, we have to be willing to take the inventory, right? Right, Jimmy? We have to take the inventory. And so then we do that. And then if you're dealing with a person and you want to help the relationship, then, you want, the main thing of it is a person that you have hurt, they don't think you get it, right? Isn't that true? They don't think you get it. You don't get it. You don't know what's going on. And you're saying, if you're saying you're sorry and you don't get it, then it doesn't really hit the spot. Does that make sense? Okay. So you want to make sure that you see the problem from their perspective. Okay, that's what this is about, taking the inventory. So you take that inventory to see about your behavior, the hurt that you had done, or the account of the cost of your behavior. Number 3, did anybody have any comments on that? Number 3, say you are sorry again. Because after you go through that process, you probably see it from a little different perspective. Would you not agree? Right? It's a little more clear. It's a little more precise. You got a little better picture. I mean, yes, I was sorry before, but now I understand I'm even more sorry. Yeah, real sorry. Some people say, well, how many times can you say you're sorry? Well, later on, it's going to talk about legally, if you do damage to somebody's car, legally you have to pay to get it fixed. And if we hurt somebody's emotions or feelings, how do you fix that? How do you pay that? How do you adjust their emotions? And how you do that is by really completely getting a clear and precise picture of it. Does that sound like Spinoza? But that's, being able to hone in, because see, we only know what we've done from our perspective, and we really need others to help us to see clearly what we've done, the way we behave. Does that make sense?
Saul of Tarsus sure did.
Yes. And so, and that's why a group or a relationship or a sponsor or a mentor or a pastor or a friend, a good friend, is so valuable to help us to see things that we can't see, but do it in such a way that's not harmful, but helpful. Does that make sense? All right. So say you're sorry again. Number 3, I gotta hurry. Gotta say you're sorry again. Be prepared to say this many times, right? And the rest of it is, I think it does something to the person you're speaking to, is I see now things clearly. I have more clarity now, and I I'm sorry. And I think that carries weight, all right? Now, again, yes, I've been in situations where I've been told, you've said that before, sorry. Well, I am sorry. That's what I said, I am sorry, and I am gonna do my best to show that I'm sorry in my behavior. That's what I said, that's my own personal information, okay? So, number 4, tell the other person exactly how you understand the cost of your behavior. Understand the cost, what I've done, what it's cost you, the pain that's cost you, how it's done that, and allow the other person to vent. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Can you let the other person vent? All right, you caused the pain, and they're venting from their pain. Can you do that? All right, that's what she said here. It says, allow the other person to vent, to elaborate, to reiterate. All right, as needed, so that the other person really feels, the last word is important, heard. Okay. I know with working with folks, there are some that have so much pain, and it may not even have to do with the present issues. It may have to do with long time ago trauma, okay? But the pain is still there because it's never been processed, worked through, recognized, understand how it's done. And so sometimes when people are venting, they're not venting about just the present. They're venting about what happened in the past.
Yeah.
And if you have been a person that has been not maybe even intentionally, but you've done that, but you are a person that's caused or helped that pain to be intensified or triggered. Now you say, well, that's not fair. I didn't know. Well, you didn't know that car was sitting there when you ran into it, but you're still responsible, right? Yeah, that's what everybody else says. And you, yeah, yeah. And you can say that all you want when you're sitting in jail too, so.
There's something that I found that was helpful, whenever I started apologizing, was before going and apologizing, making sure I understand, saying I'm sorry for, and reiterating myself what I'm sorry for, instead of just being like, I'm sorry, because they might not think that you mean it unless you fully understand and explain what you're apologizing for, and then you might be safe where they don't vent or backlash.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
And I think we talked about that in step 2 or in item 2 here about making inventory and communicating that to the person, but that's absolutely the truth.
Sorry, I went to the bathroom.
I was thinking that maybe that might have been the case, but you were absolutely right on.
Yeah.
Great. So, let's see, where am I at? I know I didn't get finished with that. As needed so that the other person can really feel heard. All right, number 5. Hey, I got 1 minute left. All right. Number 5, and it's a longer one. So, number 5, clarify with the other person if the behavior was now you're clarifying to them, if the behavior was a simple accident. Sometimes it don't matter if you say it's an accident or not, but and sometimes facts don't matter, but this is what she said. You need to clarify if it's an accident, okay, a mistake, a mistaken calculation of the cost or benefits. Now that's kind of a financial terminology, but it's applicable in emotional issues too. or a deliberate deed. Okay? All right? This part is not easy and takes time and attention. Right? Thoughtlessness, repeating, thoughtlessness is one of the most common sources of problems. You know, right? And may affect reoccurring self-centeredness. Intentional acts of revenge and or malice also requires great insight to acknowledge. Now, I know that's really complex, and we'll probably go over that again. I may even start there next week. But we need to think about it, and we really have to have, if you don't mind this terminology, we really have to have our heart right, in the right place, okay? Or we will react in a wrong way. I know I'm out of time, but Jesus gave an illustration of this when he went up over the city of Jerusalem. This story just popped in my head, and it means a lot to me. So I'm going to share it real quickly with you. We'll probably talk about it again next week. But Jesus prayed over Jerusalem, and because he knew the next day he was going to go down to the temple and deal with some difficult issues. So he wanted to get his heart right, I believe, because he prayed, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I called you to myself like a mother hen would call her broods or her chickens, and put underneath my wings." He wanted to care for them. He wanted to love them. And be able to take care of them and defend them and protect them. So he stirred up his compassion and his love for Israel, okay, and for all the other folks there. Of course, there was no. I mean, he was in his ministry, so yes, there were probably some followers of Christ, but they were not Christians actually yet, and so Israel were the folks that he was dealing with. And then when he went down to the temple, people say that Jesus was angry because of his reaction. I say that he did act in a forceful way to communicate what in a physical way, but it was not out of hatred. It wasn't out of malice. It wasn't out of revenge. It wasn't there to try to punish anybody. It was try to really help them. And I know that's maybe hard to grasp, but motives matter. Okay, how we feel, and because he was able to clear the temple by himself. Oh, yeah. All right, and those little boys in there had fought. All right, to have those spots. Okay, they were no mealy mouth, passive individuals, and there was a dynamic force there that was conveyed that I think was from the source of love and compassion, and helping them to understand that this place is supposed to be a place of prayer. Okay. And I think, and we were talking about some forgiveness. Not that he didn't love them, not that he didn't forgive them, but we needed to make a shift in things. They needed to be aware, and he was trying to help them do it, but not trying to condemn them to hell. I don't see that. So anyway.
That's what pruning the vine is.
Yeah.
Whom he loves, he chastens.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my take on that story. So, All right, I'm 5 minutes over, so may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face smile upon you and give you his peace. Amen?
Amen.
And make healthy choices. Take care of yourself until next week, all right?
Okay.
And bring somebody with you next week. How about that? That'd be